He was 3 days from retirement when his boss handed him a termination letter, with a smirk. 30 years of service, gone in under 30 seconds. That night, Henry made a phone call he hadn't made in 17 years. One that would shake a corporation to its knees. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. The cold hum of the overhead fluorescents buzzed like insects as Henry Carter sat across from Randy Stillman, the sterile silence of the glass office slicing into him like a scalpel. Outside the transparent walls, the warehouse bustled in ignorant motion. Forklifts beeped, radios crackled, and junior staff laughed faintly in the distance, as though time hadn't just cracked in half for the man inside. Randy, perched in his ergonomic leather chair, didn't meet Henry's eyes. He merely slid the envelope across the desk like a dealer folding a bad hand. Henry didn't reach for it. Not immediately. He just stared at the pristine edge of the paper, the clinical sans-serif font on the letterhead, the shape of a decision that had been made long before this moment. Then he took it, slowly, like it might be hot to the touch. "You're serious?" he asked, though he already knew. Randy's smile was tight and rehearsed. "There's been restructuring. You know how volatile logistics is right now. Freight costs, inflation, automation." Henry cut him off. 3 days. Randy's face didn't change. "It's a tough call, Henry. I fought for you, believe me." But Henry didn't believe him. He noticed the absence of Randy's usual Rolex, traded perhaps for a more modest brand in anticipation of PR fallout, or maybe just to project austerity in front of the staff he planned to gut. Henry had trained Randy's mentor, built the department Randy now ran. He'd sacrificed weekends, birthdays, anniversaries, all for the machine that now spat him out like worn gears. Security arrived 6 minutes later. They didn't say a word, just flanked him as he packed up the few things he'd brought that day. His thermos, his clipboard, a framed photo of Nancy on their wedding day, sun in her hair and joy in her eyes. As he walked past the cubicles, there was no applause, no goodbyes, only eyes that flicked up and away, fast and frightened, like watching someone being marched off a plank and wondering if you were next. At home, Nancy tried to hide her panic behind optimism. "Maybe it's a blessing in disguise," she said, her voice trembling with effort. Maybe we can appeal?" Henry couldn't speak. His pride, his legacy, was gone in a single afternoon. That night, under the harsh light of the garage bulb, he sat in the Camaro's leather seat, inhaling the scent of grease and rubber like a man drowning in old memories. His fingers ghosted over the ignition. A war drum beat in his chest, slow and deliberate, and when he finally lifted his phone and found that old number, buried in a folder marked Army Days, he didn't hesitate. His voice was steel. "Carter here. I need a favor, Marshal." The diner smelled of scorched bacon and overworked coffee pots, an old haunt that hadn't changed since the Clinton years, much like the men seated in Booth 7. Marshal Langston folded his hands on the Formica table, the corners of his dark gray suit jacket brushing against a chipped sugar caddy. His eyes never left Henry as the older man spoke, not blinking, not nodding, just absorbing every word with the stillness of a man trained to extract truth from chaos. Henry's voice was low, almost hoarse, as though recounting the events scratched something raw inside him. 30 years. Never took a sick day I didn't earn. And they knew exactly when to do it. 3 damn days. Marshall's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Not yet. His military discipline held firm, even now. When Henry finished, the silence stretched. 10 seconds, 20, maybe more. Then came the measured breath, the kind that precedes a calculated strike. "They've done this before," Marshall said finally. "Same company, same timing. 2 men I spoke with this year, one in Omaha, one in Charlotte. Early 60s, both canned right before vesting." Henry's face didn't flinch, but his eyes narrowed. "So I'm not special?" "No," Marshall replied. "You're strategic. Collateral damage with a line item value." He opened a worn leather folio and slid a document across the table. A spreadsheet marked with termination dates, employee ages, pension thresholds. The pattern wasn't subtle. The kind of thing that could be explained once, maybe twice, as coincidence. But 3 times? That smelled like blood in the water. Marshall's voice dropped into something colder, older. "They think this is a ledger problem, that you're just numbers on a report. They forgot some of us don't go quietly." He scribbled a case code beside Henry's name. "We file suit immediately. Wrongful termination, age discrimination, violation of RSA protections." But that's just the start. Henry raised an eyebrow. "You've already begun." Marshall nodded once. "Whistleblower affidavits being prepped. I've got a friend at the Labor Department, and I made a call to a journalist, off the record for now." Outside the window, freight trucks rumbled past like indifferent beasts. But inside that booth, a war room had formed. Not one of bullets and maps, but of clauses and strategy, of justice pursued through pressure points and public light. Marshall leaned in. They thought they sacked a relic, but what they really did was declare war on the wrong old soldier. The collapse began not with an explosion, but with a headline, and then another, and another. By 8:17 a.m., Monday, the servers at Mitchell Logistics' PR department were buckling under the weight of national outrage. The company's name, once synonymous with efficiency and discretion, now sat under banners like "Corporate Greed Exposed" and "3 days from retirement scandal erupts." Hashtags spread like wildfire. #pension theft, #justice. For Henry, #corporate predators. But the story's fuel wasn't the headlines, it was the documents. The leak had been timed with brutal precision. Emails, charts, termination logs, all of it funneled anonymously to the press, each one more damning than the last. And then came the smoking gun, Randy Stillman's own email, typed casually, like he'd been approving catering. "We save 6 figures per head if we strategically downsize before pension triggers. Carter goes first." The public didn't need a jury. The verdict was unanimous, visceral, and loud. Inside the boardroom at Mitchell HQ, chaos reigned. Phones rang unanswered. Legal counsel issued statements filled with cautious words like evaluating, compliance, and internal review, but the damage was metastatic. By Tuesday afternoon, the company's valuation had hemorrhaged nearly 1/5 of its market cap. The quiet retreat of contracts began. Defense contractors, shipping partners, even a frozen foods conglomerate, all unwilling to associate with what the media now dubbed the Carter debacle. On Thursday night, someone graffitied the company's San Diego distribution center gates. "3 days to steal a future, now we'll take yours." By Friday, the board had no choice. Randy Stillman, once the golden boy with the aggressive spreadsheets and perfect suits, was terminated with a single-sentence press release. No thank you for service, no golden parachute, just a link to the SEC filing and a memo. "We are committed to a new direction." Henry Carter sat on the living room couch with Nancy when the video surfaced. Randy, exiting HQ under escort, face hollow, lips pressed into a flat line as cameras flashed like gunfire. The man who stole Henry's future was now the symbol of corporate cruelty. The public devoured it. Nancy turned to him. "You did this?" Henry's gaze didn't shift from the screen. "We did this." The phone rang. Marshall's voice was steady. "They want to settle. It's everything. Full pension, retroactive pay, health care. They'll even issue a public apology with your name on it." Henry took a breath, the weight of years still sitting heavy on his shoulders. "Not yet," he said quietly. I want to speak to the others first, the ones they tried to bury before me." The house was quiet again, but outside, the storm was still gathering. The ballroom ceiling in Chicago shimmered with antique chandeliers, their golden glow falling on the faces of union leaders, journalists, policy advocates, and quietly defiant retirees in pressed suits and worn shoes. At the podium stood Henry Carter, not as a victim, not even as a plaintiff, but as a symbol. His suit didn't fit like a politician's. It fit like a man who'd worn it for weddings and funerals and ironed it himself that morning. When the host introduced him as the man who refused to be robbed quietly, the room didn't applaud. They rose, one by one. A standing ovation not out of ritual but recognition. Henry approached the microphone with no teleprompter, no cards. His hands didn't shake. His voice carried the weight of every man and woman who had ever been told they were too old, too expensive, too easy to replace. He didn't shout, didn't preach. He spoke with a measured steadiness about dignity, legacy, and the cost of silence. "They thought we were line items. That loyalty expires like milk," he said. "But they forgot. Numbers don't vote, don't march, don't sue. People do." 3 rows back, Nancy sat with a program folded across her lap. Her hair had thinned since the diagnosis, but her eyes never wavered. When Henry paused and looked her way, she squeezed the thin silver ring he gave her 41 years ago and smiled. Small, proud, tear-bright. The headlines the next day didn't just carry his name, they carried his legacy. The Carter Clause passed with bipartisan support, the first bill in 2 decades to overhaul federal pension protections. No corporation could now terminate an employee within 30 days of pension eligibility without third-party oversight and public disclosure. The loophole had been closed, welded shut by a man with no law degree, no campaign donors, just history and resolve. That night, Henry and Marshall returned to the diner. The same cracked table, the same stale coffee. The waitress remembered them and didn't ask for orders. Henry stared into his mug for a while before speaking. "It's funny. I thought I'd spend retirement fixing up that cabin. Instead, I ended up fixing something else." Marshall stirred his coffee with the end of a toothpick. "You gave them something permanent, Henry. A line in the law. A warning in the wind." Henry nodded slowly. "They thought I was just a number. But you had names," Marshall said. Henry raised his mug. "And I had memory." They clinked their cups, ceramic against ceramic. No fanfare, no cameras, just 2 old soldiers who'd won one more battle. And somewhere in the night, justice exhaled.